terms of the question of what does business need to do to address climate change effectively, I mean, I do feel in our theme of optimism, I do feel encouraged in terms of the momentum and the energy of business in this area. For example, in light of the Paris, the pullout of Paris from the U.S. government, 1,000 businesses declared that they were going to commit to meeting some of the Paris commitments. So we see some energy going there. But in the long term, what does business really need to do in order to engage in this, in order to invest in sustainable businesses, in order to invest in technology, in order to move forward on this transition to a low-carbon economy? Well, what business generally needs is it needs clear signals from government, clear regulatory policies and long-term signals about the cost of carbon, of taking this external cost and internalizing it. This is really what's going to motivate and move and change business. And so the good news is that at COP21, 2/3 of the nationally determined contributions had something in it about creating a price on carbon or a carbon market. And that came from nations representing 60% of global emissions. So including 3 of the 5 largest emitters of India, China, and Brazil. So this is a really good indication that this is on the minds of governments, and we're moving forward on that. Today, 42 countries and about 25 subnational, either states or cities, have some type of pricing mechanism on carbon. Now, these prices only cover about half of the emissions coming from those countries. So it's about 8 gigatons of carbon, which represents about 15% of all of the global emissions. But it is a start, and we keep getting good news. So in 2016, we had 3 new nations instituting emission trading systems, ETS, and in the first half of 2017, we had 2 more emission trading systems and 3 carbon taxes. So the momentum is building. And the big news, of course, is China. China has had a pilot with 7 provinces and states, and hopefully by the end of this year or the beginning of this year, they're going to roll that up to a national program. And when that is launched, that will double the amount of emissions that are covered because China is so big and such a large emitter. So if today the emission pricing covers about $50 billion, China will make that into $100 billion overnight. So we're seeing this momentum. We're seeing these institutions being put into place. We're seeing people being engaged in this issue. But it's not a panacea, so we have problems, obviously. So according to the World Bank does an annual state of trends of carbon pricing. And so when they look across all of these different carbon markets and these carbon taxes, the problem is that in general, the price of carbon is less than $10 a ton of CO2, okay? And $10 a ton of CO2 is not gonna get us on the path to the 2 degrees. The Carbon Pricing Leadership Commission, the High Commission, estimates that by 2020 we need to price somewhere in that range of $50 to maybe $80 a ton. And that needs to then continuously move up. So we're at 10, and we need to be more like 50 plus. So we have a ways to go in terms of the pricing. But the good news is we have some of these mechanisms are covering a lot of the emissions. We just need to raise the ambition on that. And then carbon pricing also is not, I think it's incredibly important to have a long-term price signal for business. This is really going to make a difference. But it's not a silver bullet, right? There are concerns. There are some legitimate concerns. I mean, people are worried, businesses are worried about competitiveness, about what they call carbon leakage, meaning that one country would be able to price carbon low and it wouldn't be as competitive if you were in a higher carbon priced country. So we have to find ways to join some of these and have these carbon systems have more general pricing. There's also the concern that we'll generate higher energy prices and that will disadvantage the poorest of the poor, who will not be able to afford those prices, especially in low-income countries. And so there are impacts, and then also carbon pricing cannot be done alone. A policy all by itself. It really needs to be done in relation to other policies, such as reducing or eliminating the subsidies in fossil fuels, which is really like a negative carbon tax. Think of that as a negative carbon tax. We really need to reverse that. And right now, many of our countries still subsidize fossil fuels, so we need to move beyond that. So I think it's a mixed bag right now, but we're moving in the right direction. So how does that impact businesses? So businesses as well are looking at internal carbon pricing. And right now there are 1,200 businesses that either have a internal price on carbon or will have one in the next 2 years. About half of them already do this as a accounting and a risk management tool. So they use this as a price that they put internally on projects, which allows them to invest and fund more sustainable investments. It allows them to pull back investments that may be too risky if they think there's a future carbon price, and it allows them to invest in innovation. So I think that's, again, very encouraging. We're already seeing that across the board with big companies, with some of the energy companies, and some other companies as well, leading on this internal price of carbon. So again, good news, we're not there yet, but we're walking in the right direction.